She had already decided. That was the dangerous part. Not the fear, not the doubt, but the quiet certainty that had settled inside her hours ago, long before she consciously admitted it. She was going. The clock above the bar showed 6:12 p.m. Masha stood still for a moment longer than necessary, one hand resting on the counter, eyes unfocused. The bar hummed around her, familiar sounds, familiar smells, but none of it seemed to fully reach her. Her body was there. Her mind was already somewhere else. Every few minutes, her thoughts returned to the same two things, like a pendulum she couldn't stop. The address, the time. Golden Sand Street, 369. 7 p.m. She moved again, forcing herself back into routine, wiping the counter, aligning bottles, rechecking shelves that didn't need rechecking. Her hands worked. Her chest stayed tight. The voice returned to her head. Not the words, the voice. Calm, controlled, almost polite. A voice that didn't belong to confusion. A voice that belonged to rooms where people didn't ask permission. She swallowed and exhaled slowly, steadying herself. At 6:18 p.m., Winston noticed. He had been watching her for a while without fully realizing it, his instincts catching something his mind hadn't yet named. The way she moved, precise but stiff. The way she seemed half a second behind every sound. When she reached for a glass and paused, fingers hovering as if she'd forgotten what came next, he spoke. "You all right?" She answered too fast. "Yeah, just tired." It was the right answer, which made it suspicious. Winston didn't press her. He simply nodded and went back to what he was doing. But his eyes followed her reflection in the metal surfaces behind the bar. She wasn't just tired. She was somewhere else. At 6:25 p.m., she checked the clock again. Time was narrowing. She untied her apron at 6:29 p.m., folded it carefully, and set it down. The motion felt ceremonial, heavier than it should have. "I'm heading out," she said. Winston looked up. "For dinner?" he asked lightly. She hesitated just long enough to give herself away. Something like that. He studied her for a second, then smiled faintly. "Be safe." She nodded. Outside, the evening air felt cooler, sharper. The sky had shifted into that in-between shade, not day, not night. Streetlights flickered on, one by one. She walked to the bus stop without rushing. At 6:32 p.m., the bus arrived. She took a seat by the window, resting her forehead briefly against the glass as the city began to slide past. Her reflection stared back at her, composed, quiet, unreadable. Inside, she felt fragmented. At the same time, though neither of them knew it, the sun was lowering behind a different horizon. Max sat on the concrete floor, back against the wall, knees pulled up. He didn't know the time, but he could see the light changing. The narrow window near the ceiling no longer burned white. It softened, angled, slid downward inch by inch. Evening, which meant it was close. His jaw tightened. He replayed Ava's instructions again and again in his head, not as words, but as movements. Wait, listen, iron door, not wood, parking area, back wall lower, dirt road. He didn't move. At 6:01 p.m., the guard arrived. Heavy steps, keys, a presence that filled the space without speaking. The hatch opened. A cup of cold coffee, a piece of bread. No eye contact, no words. The hatch closed. Max waited. He counted his breaths, counted heartbeats, counted nothing at all. Minutes passed. Then he heard it. footsteps retreating, a door opening somewhere nearby, the unmistakable flick of a lighter. Smoke. The guard had gone to smoke. Now. Max stood. His hand shook as he reached for the door Ava had left unlocked. The click sounded impossibly loud, but nothing happened. He eased it open. The hallway beyond was empty. He moved exactly as she had said, past the wooden door, straight to the iron one. Cold, heavy. He pulled. It opened into an open parking area, cracked concrete under a darkening sky. Freedom was close to taste. He turned towards the back and froze. The guard was there, leaning against a wall, smoking. Too close. There was no time to retreat, no time to think. Only one option left. The higher wall. Max ran. His hand scraped against rough concrete as he climbed, muscles screaming, breath tearing from his lungs. He reached the top and swung one leg over. Pain exploded through his side as he landed wrong. He bit back a scream, staggered, then ran, past the lot, towards the dirt road, away from asphalt, away from lights, into the dark. The bus slowed near the coast. Masha stepped off at 6:95 p.m. The air smelled different here, salt and food and the ocean beyond. The restaurant stood ahead, lights warm against the darkening beach. She entered. It was quieter than she expected. Only one table occupied, a couple speaking softly, the rest empty. She scanned the room. Max wasn't there. Her stomach tightened. She chose a table slightly away from the windows and sat down, placing her hands neatly on the surface to stop them from shaking. She exhaled. Wait. The reflection caught her attention first. In the glass of the table beside her. A woman. Short red hair, confident posture, eyes fixed on her. Her breath caught. She turned. Too late. The woman had already reached her. Standing close, calm, in control. Her voice was soft, direct. "Hello, Masha Rivers." The world went still.